Hi guys, welcome to Runways and Roadways. Today we're at AMTC and we have a special episode talking to dispatch. This is really important because it affects you whether you do ground or air transport. So today we have Kevin, he's a communications lead. We have Maggie, she's a communications manager. And we have Mac, which is really interesting because Mac is a full-time paramedic who is cross-trained in comms. So they're going to shed some light on dispatch for us today. Absolutely. All right, so I'm going to have each of you do a little introduction for us. And if you could tell us one thing that you enjoy doing outside of work. All right, Kevin, we'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm the Communications Center lead. I've been with my company for about 3.5 years. One thing I like doing outside of work is traveling. So a couple days before this trip, I just came from Turks and Caicos. So now I'm here in Salt Lake City.
That's amazing. How about you, Maggie?
I've been a communications center manager for 3 years, communications specialist 5 years previous to that, with some previous dispatching experience. And what I like to do outside of work is go to Disney World.
Ooh, fantastic.
I'm Mac. I've been a flight paramedic for about 4.5 years now. Did 3 years of ground experience before that. And I'm also cross-trained into our comm center. And outside of work, I love to spend time with my dog.
What kind of dog do you have?
She's the most perfect 4-year-old lab mix. She doesn't listen very well, but it's okay.
That's awesome. Thank you. So, Mac, let's start with you because this is really interesting. You fly full-time as a paramedic. What made you want to cross-train into comms? And when you got there, what do you think was the biggest learning curve for you?
Sure. So I always had an interest in cross-training into the comm center. I would say that I always wondered what happened behind the scenes, and I wanted that kind of 1,000-foot view on the company. So I would say that's what I was most interested in. And when I got trained into the comm center, I feel like we all say that we're good multitaskers. I learned very hard that I was not as good as I thought I was. So I'd say that was one of my biggest learning curves coming into the comm center.
Okay, I think this segues us into kind of setting the scene for dispatch. Maggie, we talked a little bit earlier about how many calls a dispatcher actually takes per flight. So for anyone who's wondering, do one of you think you could almost like set the scene for us on what happens from the initiation of somebody requesting transport, and then kind of explain how it goes from there? Why does it take so many calls? Do multiple people work on a call? Absolutely. Do you want to start that for us?
Okay. Definitely. We really do the team dispatch, and we feel that really is the best for our crews and our patients. So what that's going to kind of look like, we're going to be taking in calls primarily from interfacilities or 911 centers. And then while we're intaking that, we're putting that on our CAD system. And
on a computer?
On a computer, okay. Yep, on a computer. And then somebody else is going to start dispatching that out while we're still even gathering patient information to get that weather check started.
Okay, so I just want to clarify because this is important. You take the call, yes. You're entering it in the CAD system. If you're working in 30 seconds, yes. If you're working with Mac, he's already calling somebody else to save time.
Yes.
So he's calling the crew.
Calling the crew out.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, and then we have our intake process that we get, primarily we're gathering that patient information, what's going on, and then our key safety factors, for you guys is what's that wait for that patient and kind of what that's going to look like and what you guys are going to oversee and what equipment you're going to, so you can kind of know, but obviously we don't get everything. So we try as best we can to get as much as we can. Sometimes we're getting from that send-in facility where they only have one person available to talk on the phone, or that 911 center. We have very rural areas in our area, so there's that one-seater dispatch. So we're trying to get information that we can. In this time, we're hitting save, and Mac's able to see, if he was my dispatcher, he's able to see everything that I'm saving while I'm multitasking. And then I'm also multitasking and listening to Mac, so I can hear, did they already accept the flight, or are they still checking weather, to save that time for our partners. You can say, hey, they're still checking weather, or yep, that flight's a go, can I get the helipad secured? So that seamless process so that there's not those multiple phone calls. However, there are times where there are multiple phone calls. I know we talked about it earlier, and what that looks like. We, in our dispatch, we try to keep it all up to date. Kevin's really good at keeping up all the facility information so that our dispatchers know who to call, because there's some facilities there's just one phone number we call for all, or there's 3 numbers we need to call to make sure that they're ready for that helicopter to come.
Maggie, that's a fantastic explanation. I already have so many questions just based off of that alone.
That's just the start.
That's just the start, right? So the first thing that comes to mind is you take in medical information to pass to the crew. Yeah. So does that mean if you come in with a non-medical background, there's some bit of medical lingo you have to learn. Is that right?
Sure. So I can speak to that. When our comm specs are starting out, go through an orientation process. So ideally about 2 weeks in the classroom. And during that time, they do have a medical terminology course. So we do have somebody that teaches that. And then a lot of it, too, is learned, I'd say, kind of in the field, per se, just from being on the floor, working with our clinicians. So medical background definitely helps, but we do have people that come from all kind of walks of life, so it's not required.
Awesome. So my next question is, it's frequent that you guys talk to other dispatches, right? So like if it's a 911 call, you're probably talking to that service's dispatch, right? So do you have certain dispatch lingo that you guys recognize, or is it all just very straightforward communication?
For the most part, it's straightforward. And I say that's straightforward because it's normal to us. We key on what other first responders are going to talk. One great thing that in the first responder community, you guys would all agree, it's that basic language that they've all switched to. It's not back in the day when they do all the 10 codes. Now, there are some agencies that still do 10 codes. And if an agency says a 10 code, we still clarify, okay, well, what does that mean in your world? Because there's different 10 codes all over what a traffic crash might be.
That's so smart. I appreciate you explaining that. Is there anything specifically that if you guys said it, you three would recognize it and I wouldn't because it's specifically dispatch lingo?
I think we said it already is CAD.
CAD, yeah. Can you tell us? That's great. Can you explain what a CAD is?
So that's a computer-operated dispatch. So that it's just everybody has CAD. So there's different types of CAD, but just that's your normal CAD. A dispatcher 911 just be like, well, my CAD is giving this address, and you'll be like, well, my CAD's giving this address, and then we work together to try to find the best, especially in those rural areas. I mean, computers have come a long way, but there's still some roads have 5 different names.
That's excellent. Thank you for clarifying for us. All right, Max, so working full-time as a flight paramedic, what do you feel like is something the flight crews or the ground team would be surprised to know about dispatch? And is there anything that we can do on our side that makes it easier for you guys?
I'd say something that I know I was surprised about when I came into the comm center is the amount of multitasking that needs to be taking place. I mean, we at any points of the day, we could have between 0 to 8, 9 flights on the board. I mean, how many phone calls we have to make per flight? Upwards to 10. So we're talking to a lot of different people, and that's just phone calls. That's not radio transmissions. That's not logging what we need to log. That's not securing, I mean, it is securing helipads. But I would say that what I would love for crews to know is that we are juggling not only your call, but we're juggling a lot of other calls as well. And we're also taking admin calls. We're taking billing calls. You know, just there's a bunch of things. I mean, we're right in the middle of dispatching a flight and someone calls like, hey, can I talk to your CEO? Well, I don't have that direct number. Like, no. Like, so we do a lot of that kind of stuff as well. So just know that there's a lot of stuff going on as well. So just because your channel is quiet doesn't mean that all of our channels are quiet.
I love that. I pick a favorite line from every podcast, and that may be it. Just because your channel's quiet doesn't mean ours is. I think that might be the perfect. And that's true because anytime we have a question, if we need something or we forgot something somewhere or that somebody wants information, that all goes through dispatch, right? Mm-hmm. Right. So you guys, just call comm. Yeah. So you guys aren't just fielding the actual emergency. You're also fielding like the side stuff that happens in between as well. Thank you. That actually sheds a ton of light. Do you have anything else you want to add about the complexity of multitasking, Maggie?
Yeah, I think it also comes down to also the staffing and how that looks. Because also I think one thing where Mac was saying all the phone calls is we also have a chat feature that we can talk to our partners as well. So sometimes we're talking on the phone while listening to the radio and also chatting to another person. I think that is probably the most complex. And we're always situational awareness is huge in the communication center. We want to be aware of because it could come down to that safety for you guys.
Maggie, that is such an excellent point. I think we'll move into that next, but to wrap this up, what I'm hearing from you guys and from Mac particularly is concise communication from the crews and patience when needed. Absolutely. Is that probably the best thing that we can do? Mm-hmm. Very cool. I will say, as somebody who does work with Mac and knows him personally, when I call comms and I hear his voice, and there's kind of like a calming thing that comes over because I know that whatever I'm dealing with, he knows because he's done it. And so I know there's like probably a little bit of grace because whatever chaos I'm dealing with, I can imagine it. So just for me, it's kind of calming to know. But I'm sure you guys, all are the same way, just understanding about like, I have our thing going on, you have yours going on. Mm-hmm. All right. So Maggie, you touched on safety. I think this is a really interesting topic. I would love to dive into it. Somebody asked recently about how long an aircraft has to go communicating with dispatch. I know that can be kind of complex. There's different rules like air, ground. Do any of you feel comfortable breaking that down for us? Because ultimately, I would love to know what it looks like when you do have to activate like an emergency procedure.
Absolutely. So we're checking on our crews. 15 minutes is the golden hour. We want to make sure that we're hearing from them when they are in the air every 15. And then Kevin can kind of touch on more kind of what that looks like.
Sure, and keeping in mind the 15 minutes, we do have some dead zones in our region, some very rural areas that don't always have radio coverage. So we have other means to get a hold of our crews too. So we have a satellite phone in the aircraft, both in our rotor wings and our fixed wing that we can call. We have multiple methods to track aircraft. So our CAD system would be our primary one, but we use other open source flight tracking programs as well. And then, for example, when our crews are at an facility, if we have not heard an update from them in 45 minutes, our CAD system will prompt to check on the crews. So we're not going to bother our crews bedside, so we'll let you guys do your work. We'll call your pilot, and we'll just say, hey, how's everything going? Just checking on you, making sure everything's okay. And usually the pilot will say, yep, they're still in there working, or, oh, here they come right now. They're bringing the patient out to the aircraft. So same thing for a scene flight. A scene flight is 30 minutes. So again, we won't bother the med crew's bedside or patient side. We'll contact the pilot and just make sure everybody's safe and everything's going okay.
Okay, yeah, so you guys are frequently checking in with us. So even when my radio says, beep, out of range, I still have the phone on me. I can contact you guys regardless, even if our radios aren't working. So always got to be in communication with comms. That's very, very important. All right, so let's say that we're in the air and we miss our mark to check in. What happens in that case?
Yeah, so like Kevin mentioned, we're going to try to use all our resources to make sure, we're see you tracking. Now we're not hearing from you. You're not tracking. We can't get a hold of you on any of the radio channels. Well, then it's going to be a PIP, and we're going to missing aircraft. It's going to go into effect and how we're going to start that. Now we're going to be making a lot of phone calls in this situation. We're going to be working alongside our operations control specialists, and we're going to get the ball rolling to make sure everyone's involved. We kind of have a process. We practice it so often that everybody knows their role in these situations, because it's important that we kind of just are able to jump in. So there might still be if all of us are working and there's 10 flights on the board, Mac knows, okay, his role, he's going to just take over all the other flights. And then Kevin and I are going to work on this one flight on this aircraft and work alongside in collaboration with our operations control, and then calling the leadership and just making sure that how we're going to go the process of finding that aircraft.
So I'm sure there's a lot of phone calls that you have to make. Could you give us an example of maybe the first 3 points of contact when you do confirm that you're not tracking and you don't have contact?
Yeah. Our first point of contact, so we're gonna start also reaching out. Can we get the stat phone? Our operations control, they're gonna be calling our incident commander. Then also they might try calling air traffic control, see if they've had contact. Maybe it's the radios linked to us that are having problem. And then also we could use other resources if there's other of our aircrafts. They do air to air, get a hold of. So we're thinking all outside the box.
Yeah, that's really important to know.
Something that great we have is with that incident command now is we have so that to prevent, because we have a lot of phone calls that we're making, and everybody, who do they want to call in this situation? They want to call COM.
Right.
So we have a paging system that goes out to leadership, and then that's how we can communicate.
Once you involve leadership incident command, that probably takes a little bit of the weight off of you, because they can be working in conjunction with you guys as well, fielding calls, and just can put your information together. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Thank you for explaining that. Without getting too personal or singling anything out, is there an emotional aspect that would come with that if you were to experience that type of situation for a dispatcher?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you kind of all experience it. The one thing that's unique about dispatch is we know, what we have to get done. And so in that moment, we don't really realize it because that adrenaline's running. We're all working together. It's a lot of communication. We're literally communicating everything because we don't want to miss anything. And after that moment, and that's kind of where I step in as manager. So I'm one of the top 3 that are going to get that phone call. And so I'm going to see what resources can I get in the comm center and because I want to get them relieved in that situation. Do they need extra help? How can I step in and help? Or can I find them relief so that they can have a minute to just kind of process or what that is? And we also have that fitness for duty assessment that we also just started that we do in the communication center.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's actually a really good point. So obviously on the flight side, we do an assessment after each call. We assess our fatigue, our risk, make sure everybody's ready. What does that look like for the dispatch side? You want to take that, Kevin?
I can take that. We do our fitness for duty at the beginning of every shift. So our comm center works 12-hour shifts. Our shifts are 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So at the start of your shift, we'll fill out our fitness for duty. It'll talk about your experience, years as a comm spec, your rest or stress level externally. If you have any signs of illness, just kind of letting your partners know what's going on. So you don't have to get too personal saying exactly what you're dealing with, but it lets your partners know, hey, Maggie might need a little extra help today. He's not feeling well. Limiting our distractions as well. And then if it does get to a certain point, it'll flag for a manager to step in. And then at that point, we can look at, do you need to go home? Do you need just some rest for a little bit? Or what can we do to help you?
I love that. This is a really good moment, I think, to highlight the fact that you guys hear the beginning of every call. You get to hear what we're going on. We go and we see it, but a lot of times we see the conclusion too. And you just feel that on the front end, and you probably don't always get to know. And there's still an emotional trauma. I'm sure that comes with that, with the stress, with the multitasking. Like, you're the first line, really, when it comes to somebody's emergency in a lot of these situations. So I just personally want to thank you guys for what you do, for having our back, for supporting your crews. It's really, you're such a vital link when we talk about like Lincoln survival. This is so important. So I'm really appreciative that you guys have highlighted for us today what you guys go through on the back end. And it's so easy when we're in our world of, we're getting ready for the flight, we're going through our safety stuff, that we're not thinking about what you guys are doing, or we could be like, oh, why is comms doing that, But like in reality, like your job is equally as stressful, it's just different. And so I'm really grateful for the level of training that you guys go through and everything you put in to have our backs, because really you're keeping track of us for our good, for our safety. So yeah, I appreciate that so much, guys. I feel like this was a really good look into kind of like humanizing dispatch for us.
I think the best thing too is just the collaboration. I think it's important, not only I really push for our comm specs to go out into the field and really see also your side, but then I'm also really encouraging, Mac was a great addition, cross training and being a good advocate for the comm center, but also come and sit along in the comm center. You're going to see what all it looks like.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. If your comm center is open to that, I would definitely recommend that you sit along. We won't call it a ride along. We'll call it a sit along. Yeah. Kevin, did you want to add something?
Sure. I think just the open door communication between both the clinical side and the comm center side. If you maybe don't know why we do something, feel free to call and ask. And same thing on our side. If we're wondering why you guys are doing something, we'll call and ask too. So just keeping that open communication between the two entities.
I love that. That's great advice. Mac, you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I would say for any companies out there that maybe have their own comm center and have clinicians that are wanting or willing to cross-train, it's been an amazing, eye-opening experience for me. And I kind of consider myself one of the biggest cheerleaders of comm center, because I feel bad because I come in and I'm like, well, I do my best. Like, I try. And Maggie's like, good job. But I'm able to bring that perspective out into the field. Maybe this is the reason why comm is doing it this way, or I don't know, but maybe we can just call and ask. So I think just being that link between the two is super productive for the entire company. So keep that in mind.
I love that. It's such a simple thing that we forget is you can talk to your coworkers. You can call, you can ask. Absolutely. You don't have to, jump to a conclusion. You can talk to them. So call, ask,
And it's, everyone's always learning. And so I think that's very important, as nobody ever knows everything in this field. So as having all these people come in and having Mac is a huge help from that standpoint, because you can shed light on the clinical side too. So
I have a funny story. So when I first started training, Kevin was in charge of training me, and I was like, when pilots call off, 3 souls on board, 20 of fuel. I could never remember how much fuel, so I just said, yep, your fuel is adequate. Like, they would never take off if it wasn't. Why does this matter? So here I am trying to apply just common sense, and Kevin's like, no, you're done. Stop what you're doing. I was like, okay,
listen to him.
So yes, it's a learning curve for sure, but a good one at that.
I love this. If you guys don't mind, I want to touch on one more thing because I think it is still an important aspect of the dispatch side because it links aviation and dispatch. I'm sure everybody's heard the term OCC. I know we don't have, none of you guys work in OCC as well, do you? Okay, so just clarifying, I know we don't have a representative here, but if you could just explain what that stands for and just maybe a brief explanation of the role that they play in conjunction with dispatch.
Sure. OCC is our Operations Control Center. Those are, you kind of hear the term flight dispatcher, which kind of get confused with communication specialist. So they're actually two different roles. So flight dispatcher kind of comes from the airline world. So the Part 1, you're Part 121, Part 135. Yeah. So we're the Part 135 world. But so flight dispatcher / operations control specialist is their title. So what they do is they look at weather, pilot duty time, any maintenance, scheduled maintenance that's coming up for the aircraft. So we work hand in hand with them. When a flight comes in, they're immediately checking weather alongside the pilot, and they're checking duty time for the day as well. So when we're dispatching aircraft, or even sometimes before we dispatch an aircraft, our OCC can already tell us, this asset's not going to be able to take the flight. You guys should look at this. Or, hey, there's weather moving into this region. The base you're initially looking at giving that flight to isn't going to be able to take the flight, but this storm system's moving through. We might be able to get to it on the back end if you send a different base. So just having that partnership and the collaboration is huge with being able to help our patients and get everybody transported safely.
That's awesome. That's a great explanation. So fair to say that on every call that comes in, there's an active part from dispatch, which would be comms, right? Comm center and OCC, yes, which is Operations Control Center.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Anything else you guys want to add about OCC collaboration?
It differs between organizations. So, always feel free, like we said, is reach out. What Kevin explained is really how we handle our Part 31.
Sure.
5. So it's just kind of reaching out and seeing to get clarification on what that looks like. I know that you don't have, as a clinical crew, don't have much interaction with them, but your pilots might have a lot of interaction with them.
Yeah.
And I forgot to mention, on the beginning, the pilots are also submitting their risk assessment. That is going to OCC.
Okay.
So they're the ones who are approving that and looking at the multiple safety factors that come into that.
And there's a legal responsibility with approving risk assessments, which I was like, I didn't know that. Like, what do they do all day over there, right? Other than look at the weather. But no, I did not know that they have legal implications to their job as well. So, making sure that we fly within our legal standards too. That's a big part of what our OCS partners do as well.
Mac, that's so true. We are regulated by not only the FAA, but also our policies or whatever company you work for as well. So holding the standard, and that really keeps everybody safe, which is important. So yeah, everything you've heard today is truly a group collaboration. That's why we all need to work together. And I love what you guys highlighted today about, if you don't know, you should go find out. You should go ask, because the more that you understand the different components of how things work, the better you can be successful at your chain in it. So that's awesome. Thank you guys so much for talking with me today. I think this has been really enlightening, especially if you're looking to get into transport at all. You're going to have to work with a comm specialist. So yeah, thank you guys. Yeah, you're always watching. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for being with us here today, and enjoy the rest of the conference.